And now we're back again for yet another episode of the Edwardo Series. Today's episode is a bit contradictory on Pastor Edwardo's part, as we'll see later. But for now, let's hear Pastor Edwardo's fourth reason for why we don't keep the law of Moses.
But furthermore, we don't keep the law of Moses because of the fact that the Bible teaches it was written for our learning and also for our admonition. The proper use of the law is found in looking to it as a system of learning. In Romans chapter 15 and verse 4, the same apostle who taught that we're dead to it and that we've been delivered from it emphasized that it was written for our learning. He said, for whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. There's much to be learned from the Old Testament. We learn where we came from, how we got here, how that God said, let us make man, and he formed man of the dust of the ground. And he caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he took a rib from his side, made a woman, and brought her into the man. We learned the fact that God means what he says and says what he means. He's strict.
God definitely does mean what he says and says what he means. Like in Psalm 89:34, my covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips. Or Psalm 119:152, concerning thy testimonies, I have known of old that thou hast founded them forever. Or even Psalm 119:160, thy word is true from the beginning, and every one of thy righteous judgments endureth forever. He certainly does say what he means, and he says throughout the Old Testament to keep his law. How then can we say that we are no longer to keep the law?
We learned the fact that God means what he says and says what he means. He's strict. When God said not to touch the Ark of the Covenant, for example, that those who touch it would die, Numbers 4 and verse 15, he meant that.
Wait a minute, Pastor Edwardo. That's in the law of Moses. You mean we're actually supposed to do what the law says?
In 2 Samuel 6, when Uzzah put forth his hand to study the ark, what happened? God smote him there for his error, and there he died by the ark of God. So lots of lessons to be learned from it.
Yes, the lesson we're supposed to learn is to keep God's law.
But also in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 11, evidently Paul saw value in the Old Testament because he talked about those things that happened during the time of Moses. How that in 1 Corinthians 10:2, all were baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. How they all ate the same spiritual meat, drank the same spiritual drink. But he said, with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things were our examples, to the intent we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. Neither be ye idolaters, as were some of them. Neither let us commit fornication, as some of them committed. Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted. Neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured. And in verse 11 he declares, all these things happened unto them for ensamples, and they're written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come.
Let's read those verses again and compare them with the Old Testament and see what we come up with. Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. See, here's God's pattern. Israel was saved by the blood of the Lamb, they were baptized in the cloud and in the sea, and that's where most Christians stop. I got saved, have been baptized, now I'm going to heaven. When actually the next step in God's pattern is to receive his law and do it. And did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink. For they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But with many of these saved by the blood and baptized people of God, God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. This reminds me of Korah. Apparently Korah believed God enough to put the blood of the Lamb on his doorposts. He was baptized in the cloud and in the sea. He should be heading straight for the pearly gates, right? But what happened? The gainsaying of Korah. And Moses said, hereby ye shall know that the Lord hath sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of mine own mind. If these men die the common death of all men, or if they be visited after the visitation of all men, then the Lord hath not sent me. But if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth, and swallow them up, with all that appertain unto them, and they go down quick into the pit, then ye shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. And it came to pass, as he had made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them, and the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that appertained unto Korah, and all their goods. They and all that appertained to them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. Look at this example or ensample that God is giving us here. Korah was saved by the blood of the Lamb. He was baptized, but when he rebelled against God's law given through Moses, he was sent straight into the pit of hell. But in the New Testament, Jesus says, "If thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments." Let's continue with 1 Corinthians 10. Now these things were our examples, to the intent we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. Neither be ye idolaters, as were some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. This comes from Exodus 32, 6-8. Let's read the law and see what we learned from it. And they rose up early on the morrow, and offered burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and to drink, and rose up to play. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go, get thee down, for thy people which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed thereto, and said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. So, if we read the law and learn from it as our example, we're not supposed to turn out of the way that God commanded at Mount Sinai. Moving on, verse 8. Neither let us commit fornication, again transgressing the law, as some of them committed, and fell in one day 23,000. Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and were destroyed of serpents. Neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured, and were destroyed of the destroyer. Now all these things happen unto them for ensamples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come.
And so the Old Testament law was not written for our doing. See? We're not given the same specific laws that they had, but we learn from it. We're admonished by it.
It wasn't written for our doing? Let's go back to episode 1 and let Pastor Edwardo read from the law for us and see what we learn.
Also in Deuteronomy chapter 5, beginning in verse 1, Moses called all Israel and said unto them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your ears this day, that ye may learn them and keep and do them.
That ye may what?
That ye may learn them and keep and do them.
If we're supposed to be
looking to it as a system of learning,
then when we read from God's law, we would learn that we're supposed to do all these commandments.
When they failed to keep it, what happened? Bad things happened. And we have a law that we are to keep today. And that principle remains, that there are blessings that come when we keep God's law, but there are consequences that come when we choose not to keep the law of God.
Exactly. The examples given throughout the Old Testament constantly teach us to walk in God's law.
When they failed to keep it, what happened? Bad things happened.
They were cursed, just as God told them in the law. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Paul said the same thing, in the book of Galatians even. For as many as are of the works of the law are under the curse, for it is written, Cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law, to do them. Can you imagine? Even Paul tells us to do the law. And that should be more than reason enough for why we do keep the law of Moses.
And so the Old Testament law was not written for our doing. See? That ye may learn them and keep and do them. And so the Old Testament law was not written for our doing. See? That ye may learn them and keep and do them.